I saw the future with eyes wide open, across a river of fallen leaves. And though you're gone, I was kind of hoping you'd still be there to shelter me, and I would find some sanctuary.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Sanctuary. With Sanctuary, you, John Smith, are no stranger with working with others when it comes to co-writing. And you wrote that track with a rather talented gentleman called Jonathan Quarmby, who has worked with the likes of Lewis Capaldi and James Arthur and Duffy, amongst others.
Yeah.
When it comes to co-writing with another songwriter, what is the process? Is it the same for everyone you work with, or how did this one come about?
Well, I hadn't met John Quarmby. We were put in touch by a mutual friend, and it's always slightly daunting going to someone's studio to write with them and aim to, with the aim of getting a song out of it. There is an implied intimacy in the songwriting process. You have to remain unguarded and reveal a little of your inner self to someone straight away in order for it to work, which isn't easy, especially if you're working in a windowless room, in the depths of London somewhere, and you're tired because you've had an arduous train journey, whatever. It's not the easiest thing to get right. With John, I walked in, this was January, start of 2020. I walked in, he opened the door, gave me a big hug, took me upstairs to his room and said, "Right, what have you got? Do you want a coffee? Let's do something." And I instantly thought, I really like this bloke. It was easy with John, more so than a lot of other co-writing attempts that I've had. This happened easily, and we wrote this song in a few hours. I had the first two verses already, so what Lisa Hannigan refers to as a first verse curse, where I've got a few lines and I can't do anything with them no matter how hard I try. That's often a good place to start a co-writing session. And I had this drinking hard in circles, trying to forget, lost a card or two, found myself in bed. She told me it was nothing, I could not disagree. And I also had the next verse. So I woke up desperate for a little air. With my coat and my change, I stumbled out of there into the freezing morning. Lead me anywhere. And the first thing John said was, what if it was, let it lead me anywhere? Into the freezing morning. Let it lead me anywhere. And then it was, okay, so where would that freezing morning lead you to? I've just talked about a fairly personal experience of drinking, gambling, getting up to no good, from back in the day, before I was the upstanding member of society that you see before you. And, well, what if it led us to a moment of reflection? How are you looking back on this moment, and how's it making you feel? And these are the questions that a co-writer asks you that you don't necessarily think of in the moment when you've been sitting there for 3 hours trying to get blood out of a stone, trying to make sense of this song. I said, well, okay, so what if you were looking back and maybe regretting it a little, maybe wishing you still had that sort of safe relationship that you once had, like a sanctuary. Oh yeah, like a sanctuary, you know. I saw the future with eyes wide open. Oh, what about like across a river? Oh yeah, like across a river of broken dreams. No, that's horrendous. What about across a river of broken dreams? That doesn't work. Across a river of fallen leaves. Though you're gone, I was kinda hoping. And this is the brilliance of John Quarmby. You know, these chords are very much in my wheelhouse, but he said, well, what if you still be there to shelter me? I might not have thought of that, you know. I could find some sanctuary. And then it resolves. It's such a nice word to sing, sanctuary. And we just went from there. The rest of the song wrote itself in about half an hour. We went for lunch. That was it, kind of job done. It's one of those really nice days in a studio where something happens.
Was it always going to be on a nylon string guitar?
No, I'd written it on a steel string. I'm glad you brought this up, because this is the first nylon string guitar I've ever had. I bought it straight after that session. He's got this kind of cheap, by his own admission, kind of nasty nylon string, but it sounds great. And I wrote it on that guitar, and I tried to buy it off him. He said no. I said, well, okay, I'll double the price. I need this guitar, man. No. So I went and did a load of research. This is the guitar that David Polkingham plays in Patty Griffin's band. He's got an older model, and it's all battered, and I played that on tour with Dave, and it's a beautiful thing. So I just bought there were like 2 in the UK, and I bought one of them. I sold a bunch of stuff at the start of the pandemic to fund this purchase, and I bought this guitar, and so far it's served me well. I've never bought a guitar with a cutaway before like this. I never liked it, but it works. And that song belongs on a nylon string guitar. Like I say, sometimes you find a guitar and a song falls out of it, but you need that guitar to be able to pick it up again. So
Will we be seeing more nylon string guitar tracks on future albums? Is it fair to say?
Maybe. I mean, as soon as I bought this guitar, I wrote Star-Crossed Lovers later on the record, and She's Doing Fine, both within a few days of each other because of this guitar. So yeah, it has to stay now.
You need a return on investment, if anything.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Return on investment is not a phrase that I've often heard in a discussion about music, but it's true. You know, you invest in an instrument and a song comes out of it. That feels like, well, this thing's paid for itself. If anything, it's given me that little spark of inspiration, whatever.
Is there gear, you know, as a man who's been a musician for over 2 decades now, are there guitars that you simply can't get rid of because of a song that came out of it in the past, even though you would never pick it up anymore?
Yes, in theory, but I've forced myself not to think like that. I've sold guitars that I've written songs on, but I have to balance it with the idea that, you know, that guitar that gave me a couple of songs in someone else's hand might give them a couple of songs. And I'm starting to believe that some guitars just have certain songs for certain people. It seems to be the way it works. So I've held on to them, but last year I sold a few. Sold 4 or 5 instruments that I just hadn't played or written on for years. And I sold them. And then people who've bought them have got in touch and said, oh, thanks, man, I've already written a song on this. And I think that I just had already written a song, by the way. They get in touch and they say, I've already written a song on this. So you think, well, that guitar is having a life elsewhere. It wouldn't be right if it just sat in a case in my studio. That's wrong.
It's like being an organ donor, and then in some cases, if you gifted an organ to someone, you would be an organ donor.
Have you ever gifted an organ?
No, not yet.
No, I mean a Hammond organ.